Alright, so this is the start of the video. This is something I promised for a while. I actually filmed a part coming up next, which will be on the in front of the fireplace. I'm gonna wind up doing a bunch more of this video right here because I had to plug the phone in because it's ready to die after a long day at work. We got through it. Pretty cold. Last vestiges of winter, I guess you could say. Not a lot of fun, but we got our work done. That's all that matters. But I wanted to give a special shout out. I try to do this as much as possible because it really does mean a lot to me. You guys have followed my journey since the beginning of the channel. Those of you that came over from Wandering Woodsman channel have followed it from those days when I had the surgery, almost died, and that type of stuff last February, and have seen sort of my struggles from there. Every now and then you sort of, not that you reach a point where you're like, I'm going to give up, because I'll never do that, but you sort of get hit, like I got hit with this cold. You just sort of wonder sometimes, like, really? Like, how much more of this can I take? Like, just physically, how much more I can take? And there are a couple things that came up that were sort of concerning, and thankfully everything's good. And a lot of those concerns and worries and stresses have been relieved. But I got a letter today from Kate. And Kate's been one of those individuals who has been a constant from the get-go. And I sent her an email, and so I got thanking her for it because it meant a lot. Sometimes you just, you feel a little sorry for yourself, and you're like, oh, my life sucks. This is never going to end. And I can't breathe. I'm coughing all the time. This is awful. I can't go out filming right now. Part of it. I had to stop there for a second because the coughing fit took. But it's just something just hits you sometimes. But the snot and all that stuff is just a gift that keeps on giving. But you sort of reach a point where you're just tired. It's tired physically, tired emotionally, because it's like this is never going to end. And you just get worn. It's just the nature of the thing. You take so many hits in a row, and it was just the appropriate and right note that I just needed today, and actually made me a little emotional too, because she's very kind, and thank you for that, and the gift that you gave Kate. That note meant the world to me. There's so many of you, Colleen, Robbie, Concerned Grandma, Angela just contacted me today on Instagram. I really appreciate that, just to see how I'm doing. It's just so many of you have contributed, not only to the channel and to this community, but you've contributed to my life being good. And I really can't state how much that does mean. Because you hit your moments where you're just like, I don't know if I can keep on going. And then you get a note from Kate, or I get a message from Robbie, or somebody just says something so extraordinarily awesome on one of the videos, and it means the world. There's a guy named Gary that he opened up his heart to me about how much the channel means, and it was right at a time I was sort of negative, like what kind of impact am I making, and I'm probably my worst critic. And my sister was telling me, I was like, you really are like very critical of yourself. And I was like, yeah, I know. I'm anal and I'm perfectionist with a lot of things. And he just sort of told me that and really opened up his heart. And it was at the right moment. And I said to him, I was like, you don't have no idea how much this means to me. Because it's. So to every single one of you, you really have made this awesome adventure, and looking forward to continuing this adventure and having you be part of this, because this is something that's very important to me with the writing, because it's in a way you sort of open up your soul and your heart and let the words bleed from your heart. And I've always been told like my writing has a lot of hope in it, and that's something I've always had a lot. And I think in our human endeavor, hope really does get us through times where we don't think we're going to make it through. And individuals such as yourselves help me to get through, because you give me hope. And we're going to get through this, and it's going to continue to get better. I'm looking forward to eventually be able to get back out filming again, but right now I just have to be careful. The work's sort of taken enough out of me, and I need that to survive. So, you know, I have a bunch of different stuff that I can do, but I wanted to do this video, and in this video, I'm going to show you some of the old original maps of the 12 gauntlets for the world of Elenor. Also show you some of like the paperwork and everything that I have sitting on the bed right now that I'm going through. The vast majority of that is 12 Gauntlets, which is the World of Elenor, that series, Provider of Light's the first book. A ton of stuff for the Boys of the Fallen Sun, the Risen Moon, and then and a bunch of other stuff as well. I have other stuff, other places stashed. I just got to find it. Ton of stuff on my laptop, and then yeah, so all kinds of cool maps. So I'm going to go into talking about what motivates me, what's been sort of my inspiration, authors, things of that nature. Go into depth with that, why I chose the name J.P. Walborn. I talk about that in the second part of this video when I'm sitting in front of the fireplace. And we'll go into that. So with that, I want to say thank you, and we will go into next part. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody. So today, filming in front of the fireplace, nice and warm. It's been the second consecutive day of like brutally cold, last, I guess, nastiness of winter. So tomorrow morning it sounds like it's going to be a little nasty, and then it starts going up in temperature. So hopefully tomorrow won't be as bad. Still got a little bit of a cold. Is this whatever it was? I guess it was a stomach flu I wound up getting from my boss, and then it turned into this whole chest and head cold, and it's been pretty brutal with the coughing and whatnot. So if I don't start feeling better by Thursday, with the weather improving, I'm going to go to the doctor and get an opinion on what's going on. I don't believe I have pneumonia or bronchitis because I've had those before. It doesn't feel like it. It's just like I got phlegm stuck in the chest and a lot of snot, the gift that keeps on giving. And it is what it is. But so I'm going to do something a little different today. It's something I promised for a while. Right now, I really was working and just not feeling that great right now, and trying to get everything in place for the citations and that type of stuff. I haven't really been out trying to get the fire in there, but I haven't really gotten out to be able to film my live filming, and hopefully by next week that'll start up again, because I should be feeling better. I'm hoping by the weekend, but I just sort of just tired and feel like poo. But so I've talked about bringing you guys into the world of J.P. Walborn. For those of you that don't know, J.P. Walborn is my writing name. That I do a lot. I have novels and things like that. I haven't had anything out yet, but I have had a lot of stuff completed for a while that just needs its final edits. And then I'm planning on self-publishing because I'd like to retain the rights to my materials. It's not the money so much. It's like I want to retain the control over what I've worked so hard and put so much into. And, you know, as I went through high school and stuff like that, I just didn't, writing wasn't my thing. I always enjoyed reading, but it never turned into that whole thing where this is what I wanted to do. And in early 20s, I started taking some classes on journalism, freelance writing, and then eventually screenwriting. And so screenwriting was sort of my first love, writing scripts for movies and films. And then I started to really enjoy writing something much longer, novels. And my dad was always such a huge storyteller. Even my mom's a pretty good storyteller, with a lot of the adventures she had when they were kids with, you know, her brothers along the Susquehanna and Millersburg, and then my dad with all the adventures he had. His dad had his mom's dad had Grandpa Brown, and always enjoyed listening to the stories. It's like one of those things that now that he's gone, been gone over 10 years now, you sort of wish I could hear that story one last time. Unfortunately, you can't, but you have those memories yet, and they're really good in that regard. So I got my storytelling from him, and I used to tell the guys when I worked at Hershey Company. I used to tell the guys back in the air conditioning department, Jim and Eric, these stories. Jim kept on saying to me, he's like, you got to put these down. You got to write these, put it in a book because they're hilarious, they're great, and that's where Boys of the Fallen Sun and the Risen Moon arose from. And my first writing, though, had to do with this world that I've created called Olinanor. And the book series is called The 12 Gauntlets. And that was really my first foray into novelization and creating a world, cultures, politics, multi-layered story. I think that manuscript right now is close to 600 pages. Boys of the Fallen Sun's a little over 300. And I have a number of other projects that are really, really close I'll talk about. And it's just a matter of getting editing because my dad started needing a lot of help around 2005. So I wound up taking care of him. And it was just a lot of rough times, and you sort of lose the will at times to write because you got to be in the right mode to push that through, and it just wasn't there. And so that I'll go into next. I'll talk about the books and things like that. I do want to do an introduction to the series as well, and then also I want to give a special thank you and that type of stuff as well at the beginning of this video, but which you will have already heard by the time you go into this. I'm just filming this first and sort of went into things a little quicker than I was thinking I was going to. But so we'll go into the books, the influences, what made me choose the name J.P. Walborn, what made me choose some of the names of the titles of the books. I'll go into a couple of the series, and then you will get to hear the first of my writing. And also, I'll show you one of the original maps that I made. The land is much different now. The other maps I thought I had more stuff printed out, but I can't find them. I know I have a lot of stuff on my laptop yet, but so we'll go through that and go from there, and we'll have some fun with it. So thanks, everybody. All right, so as said in the first two parts, I am going to talk a little bit about my love of reading, which has always been there from when I was a kid. That was a big thing for my dad. Like, he liked a lot of stuff like the Westerns. I'm trying to think. Zane Grey was something he had a ton of. I wound up getting him into, I'm trying to think what the guy's name is. He's a really famous Western. Louis L'Amour, or Lamar. If I butchered his name, my apologies. But I wound up buying those a bunch after my mom and he had split. It was just something to get his mind off of things. And, it was something he really fell in love with. Excuse me. So his love of reading, that was something that always clicked with me. My mom was also a big reader. When I was a kid, didn't have a whole ton of options because we sort of had, it was the Lebanon Christian Academy, the school I went to, their library, which was sort of a terrifying place because it was an old trailer on the side of the building and the floors weren't real stable. But what they did have was a ton of Hardy Boys. So that was my first love in readings. And then they had, I forget what the name of the series is, but it's sort of, I don't want to say the dumbed down version, but sort of, the word eludes me right now, but they sort of take the book and make it as small as they possibly can, and it's easy for kids to read. So you'd have a lot of like Jack London. I loved Call of the Wild. I love the Three Musketeers, so Alexander Dumas was a favorite author of mine. So I had a bunch of that different type of stuff. And then my favorite book back when I was a kid was The Island of the Blue Dolphins, which is actually based off of a true story. It's sort of a sad story because the reality, which they don't go into, it's a kid's book, so they don't talk about it. It didn't wind out having a happy ending like they had in the book. Actually, it was a really sad ending, but the book itself was sad too. I'm assuming it was like a Polynesian area. Their island was sort of given out, and they weren't able to support themselves anymore. So they wound out leaving the island, and the girl that's the heroine of the series, her brother is a Nick Snooks. He's sort of a Pennsylvania Dutch for being a naughty little stinker. And he sort of ran off, and she went to go find him, and they wound up both getting left behind. And sadly, her brother wound up getting, because of being stupid and being a boy, sort of like, oh, look, there's a Wolverine. I'm going to go pet it and hug it. It'll be my friend. I'll call it George. Well, it didn't work out too well for him. So he got killed, and then she wound up being stuck on this island. And this book is about her survival by herself. It's an extraordinary story. And then eventually she winds, I guess, like a Russian fishing vessel or something like that, finds this girl. The unfortunate thing in the true story, because you're like, oh, great, end of the story. She got rescued. Now she can go to civilization and yada, yada, yada. Well, she actually, because she had no immunity to anything, so when they rescued it, they actually, in essence, wound up killing her. Because I think they said she lasted a couple weeks and then got really, really sick and died. Sorry about the downer, but anyway, I eventually got into Star Wars. I loved reading the Star Wars novels. They were just my favorite. The Timothy Zahn trilogy, which is in essence, in the early 90s, what brought Star Wars back. Because Star Wars, end of the 80s and early 90s, it was dead. There was nothing, no toys, nothing. And there was no hope of them bringing more movies out or anything. It was done. And then Timothy Zahn, phenomenal writer, wrote this trilogy called The Heir to the Empire. And it brought you back into the adventures of Luke, Han, and Leia, and Chewie, R2-D2, C-3PO, Lando. And it was phenomenal. And I just fell in love with Star Wars all over again. And so that was my teen years, was primarily Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars. Sort of like, I think it was Bill Murray's song, like, Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. And that's sort of what my life was. And then I found out about Lord of the Rings. Yes, I was a child that was not very much involved with the world because I had no clue about Lord of the Rings. And when the movies came out, I was like, well, this seems like something that I'd be interested in. So I read Lord of the Rings and fell in love with his storytelling, the way he created this entire world, mythology, and just, you know, there's a lot of basis within, whether it's Finnish mythology or Anglo-Saxon mythology and those types of things, but which he was brilliant with. And then read The Hobbit. Eventually I started reading, branching out other things. Like my brother-in-law got me hooked on a guy named Stephen Lawhead. I'm trying to think of the name of this series, but it was a trilogy that I read first. He gave me, it was books he had from when he was a teen, and phenomenal. Loved them. And then started reading people like Roger Zelazny, which is bizarre but really cool and unique. The first half of the book is phenomenal. Second half's pretty weird. I'm not sure he actually was ever able to complete it because he died pretty early in life. So his son started completing his stuff and it just wasn't the same. Then I got introduced to Robert Jordan and The Wheel of Time, which he has influenced me with the way excuse me, I start 12 Gauntlets, because he has every single book, they're different, the starting paragraph, but everything is like about the wind. The wind came in from the west or it came in from the north or wherever. And, it introduces you to the first scene. And like the wind, he touched everything and everyone and then was gone. And I just always loved it because it's so eloquent, but yet so very, very, very well put. It's so very true to life. And that series, I just fell in absolute love. And if you want to ask, if you haven't read Real Time, the series on Amazon Prime does not follow the books. I mean, to a degree, but they have this whole thing where they got to change things because, well, we don't like it. Well, the reason the series is popular is because what's in it is in it, and that's why it's done well. And I think it's, in a way, that's one of the main reasons why I want to do my own publishing, because I want to retain the rights. So if something does is quote-unquote film-worthy or probably more TV series, that type of thing, because of the whole the way things are done with Disney Plus and Amazon Prime, HBO Max, all those different streaming services, Netflix and whatnot. You can now film things that before weren't really possible, like Wheel of Time, because it's just such a massive series. Now you can do it in such a way where you can include most of what's possible and show a vast world. It's pretty neat, actually, the way things have changed with media and the formats of how you can do these series. But I've seen too many of these series be absolutely butchered. Like, I love the Earthsea Cycle by Ursula Le Guin. The series is okay, but it sort of butchers things. The one I really like, the casting was great for Rick Riordan's series, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, but they didn't follow his books the way they should have. His wit, the way he writes, the way he does the characters, it's one of the best series. It's sort of like a tweener series, but I absolutely adore his writing. Like, the guy is brilliant, and I think you're doing a disservice to authors, and that's just, it's a harder road to hoe, but ultimately I'll find more satisfaction. I'll retain my rights, and my dream, if it's ever possible, is to have my own publishing house, my own entertainment company, and sort of have that as an avenue. It'd be small, but I'd be able to produce my own things and do as I see fit. Because the industry, really, the publishing industry, is very unfair to authors. Because at the end of the day, everything is your blood, sweat, and tears, and you see such a small percentage of that in the end. It's really pretty ridiculous. But that's how it works. So maybe there's a way of changing that and making it more fair for authors. I don't know. But over this process, I eventually fell in love with Harry Potter. That is my great love. I love Star Wars. I love Lord of the Rings. But Harry Potter, I just think J.K. Rowling has a way of teaching without preaching, and that's very difficult to do as an author, that you come across as preaching, and automatically, I think, if you're preaching at your viewers or your readers, there's a natural tendency to put them off. I just think it's like if somebody's trying to push something. She's able to do it in such a way and so subtly. She has a gift. And I think she's an extraordinary person. The amount she's given, like, she's a billionaire who became not a billionaire because of how much she's given. And I know there's certain instances of things that people are upset about with her, but I think overall she's a pretty cool person. But those are my influences. And that's what sort of got me really, really into this. I'm a big movie person, big book person. I love all different types of books. Horror, not so much, but a lot of other stuff I'm pretty cool with. I like another author I'll have to mention is James Rollins. He does like thriller, military, and science and history all wrapped into one. His Sigma series is phenomenal because I love how it brings all of those things together, and he actually researches the scientific things. Unbelievable. Like, really well done series. Another guy I do gotta give a shout out to as well is Ken Follett. He wrote the Pillars of Earth, which I actually have right here. I'm reading right now, again, for like the third time. I love architecture. I really fell in love with architecture even more with the old cathedrals. About this building over several generations of these cathedrals, or this specific cathedral, and I believe it's the town Kingsbridge, and really, really cool. So those are my influences. What got me into writing, what got me into my love of fantasy, science fiction, historical fiction, because my writing goes over a pretty wide plethora of different types of things, and as I go into this, you'll get to see that. So this may wind up getting split into several parts, just because I like to talk. Sorry. So, all right. So we're gonna go into the next thing. We're gonna talk about a couple things. You don't have to look at my pretty face quite as much, and we'll talk about those. I gotta blow my nose. So, cool. All right. So as you can see, I have a ton of stuff in my different boxes here. Bunch of maps, that type of stuff, but I have stuff for like World of Eleanor, 12 Gauntlets, elemental papers. That's actually something I'm writing with my friend from England, Loons. really enthusiastic. That series I think is going to be awesome. Then I have my Boys of the Fallen Sun. There's one of the early maps because the land has changed a lot, which I'll explain. I'll go into that. Then I have a bunch of like my poetry, just short stories and that type of stuff. So I'll read some of those as well to you guys. But we're going to go over here. This one I'm going to talk a lot about the 12 Gauntlets, which that was my first big thing. And this is some other stuff that I'll wind up talking about, some of the other I have like synopsises of those different things. But this is the map. This is the original map I made. Demorloth is the land of evil, sort of like Mordor. That's actually now a center island, and then you have, like, say right here was Demorloth in the center of this ocean. You'd have one of the isles over here, another one here, another one below, and then there's around the entire thing is sort of, I can't think of what the geographical term is, but it's sort of a surrounding, real thin isle that goes around the entire thing. And I actually made this as sort of a game board because we used to at Hershey, we used to play a lot of games. So it's not the most beautiful or pretty thing, but you got mountains, you got woods, the different names of different lands like Demorlon. Some of these as well have actually changed. You have Dulin, Sombian, the villa. That's very important because that's where the whole story actually starts. They're not hobbits; they're like just normal, sort of simple people, and the main hero, Tommen Sawmill, comes from the villa, and a bunch of the different heroes, and you have a Levion, whatever else there, but it's pretty cool. So that is the first map. This is one of the early ones. I actually colored it, did a lot of work. As you can see, I can be somewhat artistic, not very much so, but I do try. But I want to give you a little bit of view of that, and then we'll go into here. We'll talk a little bit about the different stories. Thanks, everybody.